Thank you, thank you. And thank you for the organizers for the courage to invite me here, a guy who has spent all of his business career in large companies and had the privilege of experiencing tremendous growth. So I was asked to talk about what can startups learn from high-growth industrial companies. So a few comments, and basically really reflecting on my personal experience, because there is a lot, and I've had a lot of interaction with startups and continue to have that as we speak. So great to be back here also, because creative destruction is what this building is all about. When I joined Nokia in 1985, this was a cable factory, and the young engineers were actually pretty proud in introducing me to the telecom cables in this very hall. I have the picture in my mind already. So, first of all, I have 6 points which I want to take up in terms of what is there to learn. The first one is that I think that startups have a fair bit to learn about the big picture, in getting an understanding of the big picture in business. Certain things in global economy, I mean, we all read about the trends, etc., but it needs continuous follow-up. So the large companies are particularly geared to those understandings because they are looking at the whole globe, so they have to understand why China is either up or down and how that will impact. So there are certain learnings you can get from that. Secondly, to understand what is the logic on how industry phases evolve. So what is the evolution from early phase to high growth tornado, then to maturity, and what sort of business you can do in different stages. A fair bit to learn because big companies have had to think about that. And finally, strategic thinking. It's typically good companies do not need a strategy department because strategic thinking is embedded in the thinking of the key business leaders very broadly. So to getting that mindset is very helpful already in the early phase of startup when you think about how you're going to develop your business. Secondly, as such, understanding the needs of big companies is important, simply for the reason that for most startups, big companies are their customers or are developing core parts of the ecosystem which is formed by a number of startups, number of growth companies, and then a number of larger companies. So the needs of the big companies have to be understood in order to get the business logic of the cluster or the ecosystem where the startup is planning to make an impact and a real impression. And obviously it all starts from not only understanding the business logic, but also understanding what does it take to get the first deal done. What do you need to do? So it's important to have the interface open and honest interface with large companies for this reason. Then networking. I mean, we all talk about networking. So I wondered why do I put this slide up, but I just put it up to encourage each and every one of you in small companies, in startups, not to be shy in accepting your good friends, any acquaintance, to be a middleman, a door opener, a link to the ecosystem where the company, the startup is operating towards the large companies whom you want to make a deal with, or to anybody in the cluster in the ecosystem where you are operating. So it's all about building a network of seasoned friends who have the contacts and can help you in getting forward in what you want to do. Then learning about the pitfalls of fast growth. So I bet you, even if you think in your startup or in your small growth company that, gee, those solid, bureaucratic, not so exciting large companies, what the heck do they know about growth? I bet you each and every one of the key people there, have had some experiences on how they failed in some form in the growth process that led the company to be big. So it really does pay off. So I had a personal experience in the 90s when we really screwed up our logistics in Nokia in 95, 96. And I really felt humbled that, can I call some of the people that I know? So I did call particularly the high-tech companies in the US. What comes to my mind was Scott McNeely in Sun Microsystems and Lou Platt in HP. And when I went to see them, first called and then went to see them, my God, how talkative they were when I started to say that, I have this logistics problem. We screwed it up, all of it. And, what do I do? Do you have any experience? My word, it was a 1 to 2 hour monologue on what sort of experiences they had, and I could ask all sorts of questions, and I did learn a lot. I know Nokia wasn't a startup, but some people thought that that wasn't so far off, actually, from the way we were in the early 90s. So be bold and actually do talk to companies who are likely to have been there before and experienced the crisis and seen the pitfalls of growth. People will remember. I mean, these are the things you do remember when you failed and you fought back and got back into the act. They are wonderful experiences, best experiences in life, because you really feel the good thing when you have come out of it. So Lou Platt and Scott McNeely, for instance, were extremely helpful to me. And that's because crises do happen to everybody, and they lead into fantastically useful, healthy learnings if you make the best out of it. Particularly important is to understand that there are different stages of growth. There are books being written about it, so every business is a bit different. So I'm not going to start being academic about it, but it does pay off to talk to people who have seen it before and give a little bit of a perspective and background on what it is in different phases and stages of growth of company that is likely to go wrong, and how you get out of the mess which you created. It's very, very important. And then the most important slide that I have for you. So if you don't remember anything else from my comments this afternoon, so I hope you will remember what I've written there and what I'm going to say now. All of you in the small companies, in startups, you have a feeling that it's the greatest thing you have ever had is that you are able to work in a small company where you are nimble, you really can move, and you are free of bureaucracy and none of that nonsense of the large companies. True. That is a best part of a business career of most of us. But one day, Everybody who gets into a growth situation from a startup, a small company to and growing fast, you realize you come up with the reality. You face the reality that you need systems and processes. You even need manuals. I remember very vividly certain discussions in the early 90s with Nokia. I mean, what the heck is this manual? Do we really need it? And we had big arguments that how can we get rid of this nonsense of proliferation of first, second, third, fourth manual. Systems and processes just simply are necessary at some point. So it is important to learn from outside. Big companies are the best source. People who have experience are the best source on how do you scale up your business with minimum amount, an optimum amount of systems and processes or manuals in place without creating bureaucracy. It's the important thing, and that's where the experience from large companies can be of real use to you. And what is it all about? It's really about, and this is the important one, the most important point here. How are you able to grow without losing the touch and feel that made you great as a company? And that's the important thing. That's really a measure of a good leader in a startup, in a growth company. How do you get some of those processes and systems in place, procedures and even some manuals for people to look into and follow, without losing the fantastic feeling of a small company, and not easy. This is really the difficult bit. It's extremely challenging, but people will reward it, because when you grow to 100, 200, 300, that's when the danger of losing the touch that made your small company, when it was small, made it great, and everybody talked about it, how it's fun to work in this company. But I'm not so sure any longer. Now we are 400. So when a leader can do it in such a way that you don't lose that touch and feel, then then you can really say that, gee, I was successful in getting this company to the next phase. Now, I'm not saying it's necessary to grow these days to 300, 400, because of the horizontalization of the value chains and the way you can even globalize with being a small company. So I have a lot of sympathy for guys like Ilkka Paananen of Supercell who says, gee, we don't want to grow. I mean, he has understood this point without me needing to tell it. So I have a lot of sympathy. So it's not necessary in certain businesses, but it's necessary for many. And it's an ambition to have a little bit of growth and stability, etc., as a measure of success, if you want. But still, this is the important thing, to get the balance right. And then my final point, a little bit of a personal reflection on how did I, because I've sort of talked about getting the balance right. So what were the things that I had in mind in the 90s in the growth phase? I was looking at the sort of 4 things, and it's actually one of the people who worked with me 20 years or so. So he wrote these things up, and I think it's spot on. So I always had 4 things in my mind. I was looking at, is there the focus in the minds of the people that needs to be to get things done with sort of laser sharp concentration and determination that made the company really good, while at the same time having inside the company and top management particularly the ability to think big. Thirdly, what you need is, even if you are thinking big and you really don't know how to win your next battle, and you are focusing laser sharp, you need to keep a certain optimism in the leadership of the company. Extremely important. While at the same time being loyal to the great values that you believe in and which you have been practicing and with success so that your company grew to what it is. So with that, I hope I've been able to get you a little bit of feel that in fact it does pay off to have a good interaction with the best folks that have proven enthusiastic and important within big companies and who are ready to share their experience. I bet you they are more ready than you would ever think. Thank you very much.